So we rescue dogs from a number of different scenarios. We rescue them from the dog meat trade. We also rescue them from pretty horrific breeding facilities.
A life of terror has been transformed into happiness for these little dachshunds. This is their story.
Well, hi, my name's Leslie Scott. I run the DMT Dachshund Rescue and Support group, which I founded just over 3 years ago. So back in, I think it was about 2014, I came across a video on social media, and it was about the dog meat trade in Asia. And this was particularly aimed at the dog meat trade in Thailand. And I was so shocked by it and so moved by it that 12 weeks later I actually got on a plane and flew out to Asia. And it was at that point that I decided that I wanted to try and do more from a base in the UK. So that was when I actually set up and established the actual rescue, DMT Dachshund Rescue and Support group, focusing on dachshunds at the time. So we rescue dogs from a number of different scenarios. We rescue them from the dog meat trade in Asia. We also rescue them from pretty horrific breeding facilities in Asia. And we also rescue them from kill shelters in Asia as well, because there seems to be a bit of a throwaway society. So if a dog becomes ill or catches a heartworm or is no longer wanted, they end up in kill shelters. But the conditions that are kept in the breeding facilities, without going into too much detail, they live their entire lives in cages with wire floors where their excrement just drops through into the floor. They're fed rotten food, they're never exercised, and they just live their entire lives in these polytunnels, row upon row of dogs, and they are just bred and bred and bred. In some circumstances they're actually given a medication to make them come into season more frequently so they can actually produce more puppies. We aren't actually on the front line rescuing, we work with the rescues out there. It wouldn't be sort of appropriate for us Westerners to go in there gung-ho and rescue, but once the dogs are rescued and liberated from these facilities, then we fully support and financially support the dogs. But you know, the rescuers that we work with, they have to go in hazmat suits, wellies, gloves, because the conditions are just so horrific. So once the dog's rescued, we obviously work with the rescues to provide funding for them to be taken straight away into veterinary care. We facilitate a huge number of health tests, making sure that we do full blood tests, and we do x-rays where it's necessary, and we make sure that the dogs get all of the immediate treatment that they need. We quarantine them for 2 weeks before we start to vaccinate, because we don't know if they've been exposed to any diseases. So after 2 weeks we can actually start the formal vaccination process, and obviously any treatment that they need. A lot of them have anemia or skin conditions. After about another month we then start to vaccinate for rabies. They then have a formal blood test to make sure that they have sufficient rabies antibodies in their blood, and approximately 3 months after that we can actually start looking for a forever home in the UK and make arrangements to actually get them to travel to the UK to their forever homes. And we like to get them to go directly to their new adopter, because we don't like them to be passed around too much. We like them to be able to land, feel comfortable, and start building their confidence in a normal environment. There's one that actually sticks very much in my mind. He was a little wire-haired dachshund called Hamish, and he touched everyone's heart. He'd had his vocal cords severed. He was in a breeding farm, so because they don't make too much noise, his vocal cords had been cut. Most of his teeth had been extracted, and he was about 6 years old, and he was heartworm positive, and he'd spent all of his life in one of these breeding cages. So when we rescued him, the first few weeks were fine, but because he'd had, and I don't know if you're aware, but dachshunds are prone to back conditions, and because he had no muscle mass, within a couple of weeks of being rescued, he became paralyzed in his back end. So we had the joy of rescuing him and getting him away from that horrific condition, and then he was paralyzed. So we had him operated on by an excellent surgeon out in South Korea. We arranged for him to have hydrotherapy, acupuncture, but he wasn't quite getting that full feeling back. So the fantastic rescue over in South Korea arranged for him to have a proper little cot. But as it happened, when we were looking to bring him over to the UK, I wanted to put him in foster care first. And it was like a match made in heaven. He actually went into foster care with a vet who looks after all of the horses down in Newmarket. So she's made sure that he has all the rehab that he needs, and she has got him walking again, and he is nothing short of a little miracle. He is just a true survivor, little Hamish. To be quite honest, what I hope for the future of the rescue centre is, I think all rescues are all struggling right now at the moment. We're all suffering the aftermath of COVID and the COVID puppies, and even our friends in the UK who rescue dachshunds are struggling to find homes, not only for dachshunds but for all dogs. And for me, it's important that we continue to be able to find those forever perfect 10-star homes for our dogs, because that's what they deserve. No more so than the dogs in the UK, but I think that we as a nation were quite overwhelmed with the number of dogs who are being rehomed and handed into rescue centres. So, you know, if people could just keep the dogs that they've committed to, a dog is for life, that, you know, that to me is what I'm hoping for, that we can continue ride this wave of the post-COVID fallout.
We paddle out into the lineup, people smile, there's no doubt, you know, and we'll take off on a wave and I hear people going, Rosie, go, Rosie. It's pretty cool. There's actually quite a few people who surf with their dogs, and then we have these competitions where they surf on their own and they're